Educating, informing, serving. Fact TV, keeping government honest.
Call the meeting to order. We don't have an agenda, we just have a speaker this evening. I would like just to ask if anybody had any corrections or additions to the minutes that were presented from last meeting. Just to make sure that we have documented everything moving forward. I'm not sure if they'll do a kind of a recap of how we got to where we're getting, but can't hurt.
I didn't see anything in the minutes that needed changing.
Okay. Anybody else? All right. So this evening we have Katie Buckley, who is on Fact TV, and we're going, I guess, open it up to her to give us the spiel of ARPA 2.0. Thank you, Katie.
Okay, great. I'm going to see if I can get connected here. Thank you, everybody, for inviting me down. I'm glad to be here. I wish I could have been here in person, but we have came back in a contact trace, so I figured I'd spare you all and protect your health. So here I am on Zoom. I'm going to attempt to share my screen, but I don't have privileges. So whoever is the host, do you mind?
Yeah, I'll get that for you right now.
Great, thank you. I also just emailed it to everybody that was on the distribution list, so you have it as a PDF for after the fact.
So let me get the co-host, you should be able to share, right?
It's a little echoey, so I can't quite understand you.
I just made you the co-host.
Okay, great. And if you could just let me know if you see that screen, that would be great.
We can see it.
Excellent. Great. I am going to move really quickly through my slides. There's 18 of them, but for any of you that participated in the webinar for Southern Vermont with Windham Regional Commission and Bennington County Regional Commission last night, I apologize, it's the same presentation. So you can check your phone while I chat. So what we'll be covering today, we're going to cover Vermont's ARPA breakdown, timeline, what you can and cannot spend your ARPA funding on, overview of reporting, other people's money, public engagement examples, early ideas in Vermont and nationally, the roles of VLCT and your RPC, and I'd like to leave lots of time for questions. So here we go. I'm sure everybody's familiar with this by now, that state of Vermont is getting about $1.25 billion in ARPA money. A little over $1 billion is going to the state, and that will be deployed through state agencies and departments and other organizations in the form of grants and direct assistance. Counties are receiving $121 million. And as I'm sure you all know, that county money is being reallocated to municipalities since we don't have a county form of government in the state. Metro cities, there are two. It's Burlington and South Burlington. They receive their money directly from Treasury in the amount of about $20 million. And all the rest of the municipalities in the states, towns, cities, villages, are called non-entitlement units of government. NEUs, as we're affectionately calling you, you got 58 million plus all your county money. The timeline, the first payment already made. It's money in the bank and collecting interest on your ends. It's being delivered in 2 equal tranches, so that what you got this year, you'll get the exact amount, give or take a few cents, and any sort of reallocations that the state has to do. Next year, it won't be less, it will be more, if anything. Not a lot, but more. And so you'll get all those funds next year transferred the same way that you got them this year. in late summer, early fall. All of your funds must be obligated by December 31st, 2024 and expended by December 31st, 2026. Any funds not spent by December 31st, 2026 must be returned to Treasury. If you're interested in knowing who got what throughout the state, if you click on that here, it will take you to a spreadsheet that will download to your computer, and it shows every payment in the state. And just as a point of housekeeping in my slide deck, anywhere you see that sort of cobalt blue text that's bolded and underlined, it's a link to a website. So when you're in the PDF, if you click, it'll take you to a resource document. So there are 7 categories that you can spend your money on: public health, negative economic impacts, services to disproportionately impacted communities, premium pay, infrastructure, revenue replacement, and administrative. And then within each of those categories, there are 66 expenditure categories. And so I know these are tiny little pictures, but for any of you that have dug into the compliance document, you would have found this as Appendix 1 in the back. And it breaks out all of those 7 categories into a finer grain so that you can get a better sense of what money can and cannot be spent on. What you cannot spend money on, since your ARPA award is a federal grant, it can't be used as match for another federal grant. That's generally the rule there. What you'd want to do is, if you're going to use your ARPA funding in a project that already has other grant funding, read those grant agreements or program guidelines for the other funding sources and find out exactly how they define match, and that will help you determine if you can use your ARPA funds or not. Pension funds, you can't fund pension funds. Infrastructure, not directly addressed in ARPA. Can't fund rainy day funds, financial reserves, or outstanding debt. Things to consider, you can pool your funds with other communities. So if you have neighbors around you that are doing a priority list, just like I think you all are doing, find out what's on their priority list and see if it has any intersections with you. A lot of times when you pool funds to create a single project servicing a few communities, you can develop at a scale that's sustainable versus scattering resources. You can also transfer your funds. And I believe there's a village and a town in Westminster, and that the village got funding, and if it so chose to transfer its funds, it could transfer them to the town. And we're encouraging folks to take time and be patient, think bigger, and that there is a lot of money floating out there right now. The state of Vermont, on my first slide there, you saw there's $1 billion that's going through the state of Vermont, and only half of that's been allocated in the last session. So about 600 million is due to be allocated in this next legislative session. So there's still more money to land and be put out on the streets. In addition, there's an infrastructure bill and the Build Back Better bill. All of that's sort of swirling around at the federal level. And if those get enacted, then there'll be federal dollars coming for transportation, more for broadband, water, sewer. So it's worth seeing where the rest of the money is going to land and where it's coming from as you're shaping your own priorities on the local level. ARPA reporting. I'm sure everybody knows the good news that what was due on October 31st was pushed out to April 30th, which couldn't have been a better decision on the part of Treasuries. So you have plenty of timeline there. The bigger communities, Burlington, South Burlington, as well as the state, already had to submit their reporting. Whoops, sorry, my finger got a little excited there. One thing to keep in mind that your agreement is directly with Treasury. Even though your money came through the state of Vermont is just a financial intermediary. That your agreements with Treasury, you report to Treasury. They've created an online portal when the time comes that you'll submit all of your documentation and reporting through them. So keeping great records, document, and having it all in a PDF format is going to be crucial. Other people's money. This is my favorite kind of money. So look for opportunities to leverage your money. As I discussed just a second ago, lots of money still left to land. So if you are shaping up projects that could be funded using other sources, keep an eye on where the money's landing and see if you can seek out some of those other funds. We had a funders webinar on October 19th. Take your time, think big. If you click that link, it'll take you right to a recording of the webinar and the slide decks of the presenters that were there. Lots of great information about where the state's money has already landed. And I had mentioned that the state's already done some reporting thus far, and they're required to do a recovery plan. And if you click that link and you go to the recovery plan, it shares exactly what the state intends to do. So the best part of that recovery plan is going to page 10, where the state spells out all of its expenditure categories and program name and overview of what the funding will be spent on. And most importantly, it includes the amounts, so you know where the money is going to go. Across Vermont, public engagement and outreach. These are just a few examples of towns throughout Vermont and things that they're doing. We're seeing everything from a regular standing item on a select board agenda all the way down to, I'd say Jericho on that list has the most robust community engagement process with a dedicated web page, a survey, lots of information on there. So there's a broad range of public engagement that's taking place, and public engagement is not explicit in your grant award. However, your awards are pretty discretionary in that you have a pretty wide berth of what you can spend your money on. So really asking the public for their input becomes a really critical piece in the process. And it's really nice to see that Westminster has created a committee. So, and you'll notice you're on the list. These are some early ideas that I grabbed off our good friend Google, mostly from reports in the media, news articles of what towns are considering doing with their money across the state. And you'll notice there's a lot of water and wastewater in there. So there are towns that are either improving their systems that they have, making needed repairs, or they're exploring the idea of creating new water and wastewater systems. Lots of improving public spaces for hybrid meetings, improving public buildings for ventilation. So lots of different ideas swirling out there. Nationally, if any of you like data and to learn more about what other folks are doing, the National League of Cities has a local action tracker, and that 443 in that picture right there is the number of ARPA entries that they have. And so cities across the country are inputting what they're contemplating doing with their ARPA money. And while a lot of what the intended uses are at a scale for much bigger municipalities than we see in Vermont, there are definitely interesting things in there that are scalable to Vermont. So if you're interested, I highly recommend you go to that website. It's interesting, and it has an interactive map as well. And these are, I, of course, sat and was, with a good cup of tea and went through it and was totally curious to see what others were doing. And these are just a few bullets of things that I felt were relatable to the scale that we have in Vermont and very transferable. So this is my full-time job right here. I do ARPA all day, every day. I talk to municipalities throughout the state on everything from when you all certified and how to do that and everything that was needed through eligible uses, everything. I try and demystify the funding to help make it easier for municipalities to use it. And so I do everything from meeting like this, doing presentations, lots of phone calls, lots of email. I work on the ARPA webpage, which is on our website, loaded with, there's a robust FAQ, there's links to resources and other information, and I can be your go-to source. I work very closely with the RPCs. We work sort of hand in glove to ensure that you all will have the resources that you need to be successful in executing your projects, but also managing your money. And I don't know if there's anyone from Wyndham Regional Commission there tonight. Maybe I can't really see faces in the crowd. I believe Margot Gio was going to join, but Margot and Sue are your leads from Wyndham Regional Commission. And as I said, I work closely with them. And so I think I was pretty quick in getting through those. So we have plenty of time left over for questions. And that's my contact information. And I also included Sue and Margot's on there. So I am happy to stop screen sharing if I can figure out how to do that. There we go. Am I back?
Yeah.
Awesome. I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Katie, can you hear me?
I can't actually see who's talking in the room though. So, oh, okay, there you go. And if you could just tell me who you are, that would be great.
My name is John Jordan, resident, also one of the commissioners to WRC. My question is, today we received a thing from A&R about a $100 million opportunity for residents, and I didn't know if that's something we could, if you had time to touch on that, because I breathed it real fast today, so.
Okay, I'm gonna just, the room is pretty echoey, so it's a little bit hard to understand what you're saying, but I think I got enough of it in that you saw the press release from A&R for that 100 million. And so I just saw it a little while ago, and there are topic specific webinars that are taking place on Tuesdays throughout November. Did you see that piece of it?
Yes, ma'am, I did, yeah. So,
okay, and so I can't really speak specifically to their funding, but if you have a question about your funding as it relates to their funding, I can answer that.
Yeah, so I was wondering if there's any way that the funding from them can be used in parallel with the funding we're receiving at the time.
Absolutely, absolutely. So when I was talking about other people's money and leveraging your money, you can use your ARPA money with any other piece of money as long as you're spending it on an eligible use. You can pair it up with other ARPA money from the state. So the state's ARPA money and your ARPA money are almost like, in terms of the rules, they're pretty similar. Yours is a little bit more flexible insofar as you follow all the rules from Treasury and around drinking water and clean water. The state revolving fund eligibilities apply to your money, where the states might have made them a little bit stricter. Okay, does that help? I can.
It does. Thank you. Yes, it does help.
Sure. If you're, and I'll just to kind of piggyback on that, if you were doing, let's say you were doing some stormwater work and for coming into compliance with your municipal roads general permit, and it's an ARPA eligible expense, you could pair your ARPA money with a Better Roads grant if you got that. It's another example.
So Katie, it's Cynthia. On the other money for the infrastructure for water and sewer that you were talking about, that the state is going to have a little bit stricter rules on that.
Right.
When will that be available to start applying for? So is it there now?
Is the A&R money there now? I don't know if their application process has opened yet. So next Tuesday is their first, they're doing their webinars back to back on Tuesdays. And the first ones are this coming Tuesday, the 9th. So not a ton of lead time there for folks to do those, but they will be recorded if you wanted to go back and listen. And if you participated in the webinar on the 19th, you would have heard Secretary Moore sort of launching on a very 10,000-foot level about their $100 million and the priorities and how the programs would break out. These sessions will be, drilling down deeper. And so you'll have the program level staff telling you about the nuts and bolts of each of those pieces of funding. And you'll have their contact information. So you'll be able to reach out to them with questions. So if Westminster is entertaining the idea of doing some sort of water, wastewater project, seeing when those sessions are and which ones are the most relevant to the type of project you're entertaining doing. You should try and attend those, and then you'll be able to reach out to them with specific questions. And also too, connecting with the regional commission will definitely help.
Hi, Katie, it's Bobby.
Hey, Bobby.
It's my understanding that they're going to start rolling out the application process between July into June of next year. So just from a timing perspective.
Thanks. That's quite a ways away. Yeah. Did you click on that and it said, did you go into the press release? Yeah.
Yeah. If you drill down, they have an ARPA page, and it will also tell you about each of the webinars that they're going to have and links to all of that. And you can get on lists for specific topics. So if we have an interest in sewer overflows, you can get on the list and they'll specifically reach out for that.
Yeah, and even residents who have issues, homeowners. I mean, there's quite a bit of resources on their ARPA page, and sometimes you have to do a lot of clicks through, which is a bit of a pain, but the information's there. You just have to be tenacious in your clicking. Has your committee started to make lists of ideas yet of any sort of uses to see if they are eligible?
We didn't make a list, we floated ideas out at the last meeting. But I think tonight is what, maybe we're going to try to make a list tonight?
I'm good for that.
Yeah. I mean, I have one other question about the affordable housing, the 64 million for affordable housing. Can that money that a housing trust can apply for from the state too?
Yep.
So we can find out what the housing trust in this area might be thinking of with that money in our town.
Yes. If affordable housing is an issue, which it is in almost every Vermont town, I believe it's the 64 million you're referencing is through Vermont Housing Conservation Board. Is that bucket?
Well, I'm just thinking if there's an affordable housing project that we're thinking that that's a project we want to help with.
Yeah.
We're not going to take on a project.
No. But it could be, Cynthia, and I'm not suggesting this is the case for Westminster. I don't know, but it could be that your town owns a piece of land or could acquire a piece of land that would be a perfect site for a multifamily affordable housing project to be built on it. And it might be that the town acquires the land and gets it development ready to then transfer to the nonprofit.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I have a question, Katie. Jim Backo.
Hi, Jim.
I'm talking all of your meetings, so.
I didn't hear what you said. I'm sorry.
The meetings, I was in the one yesterday, so I'm that. But a couple of things that the last question made me think of. I know that when it comes to acquiring, well, it's about acquiring property. There is a down deep in some of the paperwork. There's a thing about park improvements. The town or a city could make improvements to a park or recreation area.
Yep.
I don't know how broad that is, but my question is, would that be so liberal as to include acquiring land for the development of such a thing?
Acquiring land for the development of, I'm sorry, is the mic very far away from you guys?
Yes.
The mic is far away? Okay. So I'm just going to say you can also invest in equipment to improve hybrid meetings.
That is on my list.
Just teasing. Well, not really, but yeah. So I'm just going to repeat it back to be sure that I have heard it correctly. Was your question, can the town purchase private property for the purpose of, what was the, for a park?
Recreation facility, park.
I'm sorry, what?
A recreation facility.
A recreation facility. So you'd want to acquire private property for the development of a recreation facility. So,
Yes.
perfect. It depends. What will take place in the recreation facility? Will you have programming for kids? Will you have programming for seniors? Like if it were a recreation facility where you're teaching golf?
Well, I don't think we would go that far. There is a nonprofit in town that's thinking about some kind of a low-key recreation facility for elders, for seniors.
Yep.
Walking facility and the like. And a couple of people were kicking that around, and one of them said, well, why not put more stuff in there so that you could have like a pavilion for outdoor gathering?
Yep.
Right now, for example, the last couple of town meetings have been outside on the lawn, outside this building. If it was raining, we would have had a problem.
Right.
Pavilions and places to put up tents, that would work better. And so it could be kind of multi-purpose.
Yes.
But
Yeah. What I was getting at there is, if you are opening it up to the public and you are offering, for a community center, rec center, if there's programming that takes place in there that benefits those disproportionately impacted by COVID. That's really like, if you read through the interim final rule, disproportionately impacted by COVID. And really, that's low income people and people of color. So if you have programming that is a benefit to those disproportionately impacted by COVID, you're good. And so creating public spaces that are safe for the prevention and mitigation of COVID, then a pavilion, yes. Improving ventilation in a public building, yes. All of those things are allowable. Improving space so that you can space people to have social distancing, say in a town office atmosphere, if you have some unused space and if you were to fix it up and space some of your offices so folks could be socially distanced and continue to work in there, yes, all of those things are allowable.
Well, in line with that, the room that we're sitting in are right here, these are public gathering space,
Yep.
has a lot of activities that go on. But the ventilation system consists of opening the windows.
Yep, if you were to make an air handling system in there, that would be an allowable. And if it's part of a larger project, let's say you were doing energy improvements at the same time, you could wind it all in as part of that project. But the purpose of the project is to improve ventilation.
Thank you.
And my national peers have said that they have gotten feedback from Treasury that says if those projects involve, eliminating reliance on fossil fuels, they look favorably on that. So.
I'm sorry, eliminating what?
Reliance on fossil fuels. So if you're going to put heat pumps in there and do a ventilation project.
So I'm just taking notes that I missed. Does it cover the cost of the purchase of the land?
I think it could, if that's the intended purpose. That's a cost of the project. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay.
So, but if you were to purchase that land, the project were never to happen, and that land didn't get developed for the intended use, and you built something on there that's not an eligible use according to ARPA, then you would have to pay back.
Very quiet. Anybody else?
I think we need to brainstorm.
Agreed.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've got the overall, like, this was good to give us the overall process and where there's other funding from the other towns, but I think at this point we need to brainstorm. start deciding which projects we want to do.
And so I can offer this, just to remind that you don't have to obligate until December 31st, 2024. So you have plenty of time to decide and plan and strategize and make a priority list for your community in terms of what you want to do, what's most important to you. And it might be that the thing that is most important to your community isn't ARPA eligible, but it's still an important prioritization process because there might be other funding coming that could fund that number one priority, if not ARPA. I get a lot of lists from towns saying, 15 items. Can you tell me, is this eligible? Is this eligible? Is this eligible? You can email it to me. I can come back. I can, if you, I don't know what time you're meeting till, but if you wanted to brainstorm, Cynthia, you could text me to come back in and answer questions, or I could sit here. I'll do whatever you want me to do. How's that? I just want to be helpful.
I think we can brainstorm if we need or whatever.
I have a question just came to mind, Katie, is I understood when you said it made total sense that if land is purchased and then the project that it's decided to put on it is not eligible, then neither was that purchase, and so you hold that back. But oftentimes a complicated project would require a feasibility study, maybe some engineering work ahead of time, and it starts to get a little more shaky as to how much can you do, how far out in front.
And there's two ways the town could protect itself through that. One is you could do an option. And the other is if you acquired the land, you could put a covenant on the land that specifies it can only these purposes can, a project that meets these purposes can be developed on this land. Does that make sense?
It does, but I'm also wondering that feasibility study that
You can fund the feasibility study as well.
Good.
Yeah, is that what you were asking? Can you use ARPA funds to fund a feasibility study?
Yeah.
Yes.
Katie, does any housing type project, does it have to align with servicing disproportionately impacted communities? It does. So it has to be specifically related. Okay.
Yeah. I think there was some understanding that if it was in a qualified census tract, I think pretty much everything in a qualified census tract, it's presumed eligible because of that designation. But if you can demonstrate with data to support it, that the project that you're doing will benefit those disproportionately impacted by COVID. So if you've got the right income levels, then you could use your ARPA money for housing. We're actually creating a housing, one pager, ways that you can use your ARPA money to do that. We'll be hopefully issuing it within the next week if that's what the community wants to do. But yeah, the key part is being able to demonstrate the beneficiaries. Who are the beneficiaries?
Great, thanks.
You're welcome. Sarah, did you have your hand up? Yep.
I do, thank you. Hi, everyone. Sarah Lang, I'm with the Brattleboro Development Credit Corporation. I was curious if the town is considering involving the public. I mean, do you consider this committee sort of I know public engagement is not required, Katie.
It's implicit, it's not overt.
Yes, but I'm just wondering, I know I'm asking because one of our staff was at a Newfane select board the other night and they presented on the results from a survey that they sent out to the residents, sort of asking for ideas. So I didn't know if that was something that wanted to consider, or if you're sort of using this committee as a place to bring ideas.
Sarah, this is Cynthia. We haven't specifically talked about that, but I was just looking at the Jericho website, and their survey is really comprehensive, so after you guys got done and Katie got done, I was gonna mention that.
Great, yeah, and I'm sure Newfane, I don't know what their survey looked like. I only saw sort of their results, a screenshot of their results, but you know, I don't know, maybe Katie, if there's a way for VLCT to collect, you know, surveys that towns are using that other towns could use as examples.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it is me surfing and seeing what's out there.
Yeah.
I did the Jericho one. I don't know this for certain, but I'm pretty sure that I worked on the survey with a woman from the Regional Planning Commission up there, Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission, and I'm pretty sure she lives in that community. So they have a robust network because they are a well-resourced community. It's great when you have people living there who work in places that can do that sort of stuff. So, but it is a great survey, and they may have even hired or paid for a host site to help them out.
Can ARPA funds be used for that?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I'm good for.
Okay. Anything further from you guys? No?
Yeah.
Questions? Well, Katie, thank you very much for helping us here. I'm sure we'll be back in touch with you when we form.
Absolutely. I'm a phone call, an email, a Zoom away. So don't be shy. You know, everybody's making their way in this process, and there are very few communities that are already spending money. Most aren't, because they're going through exactly what you all are doing. I'd say the only ones that I know of that have committed funds on any scale would be the larger municipalities of Burlington and South Burlington, and they had some deep revenue loss. So they're able to hire staff that they had to let go, and those sort of immediate needs that the larger municipalities had. So like I said, don't be shy. I'm available whenever you need me. So thank you. Thanks for having me tonight.
Thank you. Have a great evening.
See you, you too.
Can I just say, sorry about the audio problems. I did talk to Alex Russ, and he said, because we have the only mic coming from the camera, there's no way to get rid of the echo, but if people want to stand up and walk closer when they speak, he said that should make everything clear to the other side.
Okay.
There's no other easy fix for that.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Brainstorms starts creating a list. Is that what we want to do?
Yes.
I think it's the next step, honestly.
Well, I know, were you gonna talk about the land records? Because that was one thing we talked about at the last meeting, that we felt was a project that could happen immediately.
With the information that I've collected, and quotes that have been given to me, I would like $20,000 available to use for that purpose. I'm working with Alan at the moment currently, and we have a lot of missing images from our land records. We've got like over 15,000 images missing that have to be scanned in. So that's a separate project. But I'm working with a company that was recommended to have records tools that could complete that project quickly. And then we can digitize the land records. I also would like some a new scanner, because the scanner that we have is, I didn't throw it out the window today. So, you know, the ballpark is larger than what I initially I would request, but just to cover.
And just so I can know, is it with Pembroke or is it with?
No,
Okay, I was gonna say, I just want to stay out of the conversation.
I know, I understand. No, I mean,
Yeah.
they gave you the best customer service.
Yeah, I just didn't want to.
I know.
Yeah. I mean, I'm on board with what, because it needs to be done.
Yeah.
So,
Yes. Well, the other company was way more expensive and gave me, I did all the work for them, and I did not get the customer service, and I had asked them for their final quote by last Friday, and I wanted to be prepared for this meeting to work things out this week, and he covered it, and he didn't. I still haven't. Got great customer service.
Okay. There's
One thing I'd like to request, like, it's gonna be between maybe 5 and 10, probably 5. It was brought up in a meeting. 5,000, yeah, to support the highway and getting the hardware so that they can start uploading the imagery and the data that they need to, so we're in compliance with our infrastructure, roads and stuff. Chuck did bring it up, and I looked into it. We'll have the software scope, but I think it's such a low dollar that this would be a good opportunity to help them get that.
You called it a highway what?
Hardware scope.
Highway scope.
It's, Chuck had asked for it, and it was brought up in a foreman's meeting that he had, so I just like to earmark that for highway to improve their technology infrastructure to support what the state and federal governments are asking us to do in documentation. The fire department, you guys have some, you want to get some funding as well for stuff. So.
Yeah, but I think at this point, there's not a rush timeline. I'd like to go back to the prudential committee, now that I kind of have a sense of what expenses can be covered, which seems like virtually everything, to just come up with something and come up with a number and really present it and say, this is what we're thinking. We don't have anything in mind. I wanted to kind of really see what expenses would be covered, and I reviewed the list, and it seems pretty broad, so we won't come unrealistic, but we will come back with something.
Katie, I wanted to ask you,
Yeah.
at town meeting, did you not say that you wanted either a new rescue truck or an upgrade to the one we have?
Yeah, so that we're doing, but what we really need is a new engine, but that's probably 5 years out, I would say, realistically. And that's a really big expense, but the fire department is no longer making the bond payment on that building, so we'll be able to beef up our capital reserve. Plus, we just kind of changed how we receive our full-term listen pilot money, and so we're hoping that that will help us get a little closer to our engine. But I think,
When did you say, I'm sorry, I missed the date. When is the engine?
I think 5 years.
So 5 years from now.
5 years from now, that we would have to replace that engine. I mean, it's a big expense, we're gonna need to put some money on it.
Yeah.
To make that happen. So, I think when we come to this committee looking for funds for the fire department, it will be for other things, obviously not.
Yeah, no.
I mean, that's not anything, you know what I mean, that's not anything that we're looking for. We'd be looking for other, just day-to-day stuff and any upgrades that need to happen based on what holes in the
I think one of the things as we move through this process, collect the data, and then we start, as Katie said, we start looking at what other programs can support this before we start completing this fund.
I agree with you, but I think there's some small stuff that we can do.
Absolutely,
that we shouldn't just wait until, I mean, we're talking over the $800,000.
The $20,000.
Yeah, $20,000.
Make it happen, you know you're gonna need it, you don't have to wait on it, yeah, totally, but again.
That was my next question, we talked about the timeline. If we earmark and we know money, when we get that first round, can we just say, let's get that project on? We don't really wait for that, let's just keep moving, let's keep checking off the list and just keep a tally where we are in the fund.
Did we get our first round? We did.
Yeah.
How much
So we're
are we-
sitting on it,
we're
400 now.
Oh, so these lower dollar, we can probably get in front of the problem.
How is the disbursement of these funds going out? Like, how is that decision being made? So how is it get,
I mean, I think that as a committee, we should suggest or make our recommendations and that it's brought to the board and they approve that as an ARPA expenditure and then it goes through the process of acquiring just like any other purchase.
And it would have to go through a process of vetting to make sure we're not recommending someone get themselves a dollar.
Yes.
Obviously, that's part of the process.
Yeah.
Some stuff is gonna be
That
automatic. Yeah, and some
That's
stuff like,
already.
and pretty much water and sewer things might fall in the no problem category. But one thing is when you add the village money in, the town's really looking at just a little bit under 890,000.
and so how are we getting the word out that we have this? Because I guess I'm listening to what Sarah had to say, which is, you know, we really need to involve the public because we have some farms that are in the area that may want to come to us and ask for money. Before we start divvying it out, I've come up with a plan to communicate. So the last thing we want is people coming and saying, you spent all this money, you didn't help support us, or small business owners that are here, which is, you know, I think when you think about COVID impact and who is impacted, you know, I understand there's going to be administrative expenses, but really the vote of this money is for people that were impacted by COVID. And so from an economic standpoint, before the town starts spending money, I reach out to your area businesses and kind of, or I think the perception is not going to be positive.
The things that I think are a priority are the things that I know are difficult for, especially for the town, as a municipality, during COVID, even though we're not in that crisis mode anymore, for people being able to research and continue that process. And I really think we need to think about a meeting space where we can hold the hybrid meetings where it's professional, we don't have echo, we don't have that money. Those two things are eligible very quickly. Those are all eligible projects. We have struggled in this last year and a half with these hybrid meetings. It's the meeting space we have at the town hall is almost impossible. We're climbing over each other. It's just not comfortable. So that's another area I think we can do. And then I think you're right. Like that Jericho survey I just saw was really good. Like that one,
And it was geared towards
it was asking
taxpayers.
yes, people to go in and say, what would you, if you had this money and you could do what you wanted with it in your community, what would you do? How did it impact you?
How many families do you
They send it
have
out to
out of
businesses
it?
too?
It's on, I don't know, it's online. So I then you have to get the word out for that too. but-
There were literally families that had to go to the parking lot of the elementary school to have Wi-Fi to sit in their vehicles to do online classes. That is absurd.
Then that actually, that was part of my point, is that this building has a Wi-Fi.
Right.
But you wouldn't want to bring a bunch of kids in here during a pandemic situation and have them all get sick. Which is why I think that this, I mean, this, and you mentioned echoes, this building, this room is great, but it echoes, that's easily solved. But if we could make it a safer and comfortable place for people to gather like that, it would easily work. We've got the Wi-Fi outside, which we tried to publicize in the Gazette, but I don't know how many people picked it up.
I think part of the problem is you can't access Wi-Fi in parts of places that these people live. The
Right.
signal's not good enough, so it's really broadband expansion,
Yeah.
whatever that looks like. And I know that's big money, but
We are working on that, and with the CUD that we participate in, but they've got their own money, they've got some serious money coming to it.
yeah.
And it's going to be part of our master plan of taking care of it down.
we will be part of that. So I don't think we have to worry about that with our monies.
But I mean, as far as brainstorming and putting on a wish list, I would love to see water, I'd love to see sewer, I'd love to see a village center, I'd love to see sidewalks, you know, I mean, I'm talking, we need to think big, this is big dollars, not just that we're getting, but we can leverage against other funds. So is it, you know, so put those on, I mean, we gotta talk about everything, we need some affordable housing.
Yeah. And in yesterday's session, that came up, and Chris Campany said, when you're talking about affordable housing, you should think about significant numbers, not one house here and one house 10 miles away. And that means you're talking about water and sewer.
Right.
That's right, and that yesterday, so that's why I asked today, because I wasn't sure what the answer was yesterday. A question came up about water and sewer. Okay, now you're talking feasibility and engineering studies, and that's why I wanted confirmation that was eligible.
Yeah. I mean, just, we talked, I think, Katie, weren't at the last meeting, but we talked about regional revolving loan fund for businesses. You know, for economic development, I would love to see that for small businesses to be able to come to us and say, we have money, you know, that I can just $50,000 worth of whatever it's for.
Excuse me?
Are they participating?
I think
They can hear you.
Oh,
What, to Cynthia's point, one of the infrastructure things that's on AR's website, I unveiled it probably about a year and a half ago, but our West-West partners, they actually have a plan that they're looking to put sewer over there.
okay.
Well, there's drafted, there's a whole thing on their site where they have, it's a proposed project in a 7-year plan, so I feel that if they propose it through A&R and there's money coming from A&R, how that looks yet until we all read this memo and attend these seminars, but that's the value, I think, Mr. Cheney, that's really speaking to the infrastructure and these housing communities. And like I said, not only 1 or 2, but if you look at putting, there's a place here, they're looking at putting 200 to 500 to create a community. So those are the bigger
And that's the
projects.
point, is we need to involve the community and help with that.
One side benefit to this whole project could be doing away with some of the Hatfield and McCoy's behavior in town and working together would be nice. I'm not just pointing at people, you know, including myself, but we do have a systemic issue.
Well, we were,
Yeah.
you know, I put all the cells on the list, I don't know what they're doing, but I'll talk to Karen and Patty to see what they're, you know, and just get the orders out as to what other, our neighboring improvements are doing.
Sure, I mean, North Westminster, you know, I don't know how many people could find the line between Rockingham and Westminster. It's an important bridge in the community.
We're doing a project through Northwestern as part of the watershed to the natural resources. In the state of Vermont, it's mandated stuff that's come from the state of Vermont. Look at that, the watershed is key ones. The second, which comes from there, after the section river through Westminster. So that's a big project we're working on. And so when we start talking about that, there's probably always some money to help with that project, and we can blend so we don't overscope.
So are we heading toward a process where we're going to try to just think big and make a big list and knock things off that don't make the cut, but don't fall short because we didn't try? Is that?
I think we should, but we need more involvement, we need more, and so I think we need to decide as a community how that's gonna happen. I think that's probably our first project.
One of the things I think that benefit of the community is we have strategic partners that we do pay incentives to, and one is WRC that has resources that work on this. The other is BDCC, the engineer company that has resources. And so bringing those strategic partners in will help us understand kind of what the county's doing, what maybe they can offer support. And because they're probably hearing different things that they're using to privy to, so maybe help us.
If we were gonna reach out to the community, what would be, I mean, what's the mechanism that we do it? Do we hold a public forum where more people are invited? How do people get invited to this? You just send it out?
No, I put it on the Gazette.
Okay.
People just call and
Yeah, I get
volunteer.
it. I just wonder, how do you grab them? Do you really send out a survey? How do you attract them?
Everybody gets their news from Facebook
Right.
to attract them to this kind of,
We have the Facebook page.
yeah,
Yeah.
they,
It's a close friend, anyway. We should,
Yeah. I just, I feel like there needs to be some type of, I don't think folks know that there's eligibility for their individual situations, I guess.
right. And the one thing that I don't want to happen is I don't want for a project to come, I feel like there's gonna be maybe more than one project. Maybe, unless we find some huge project that we want to use the bulk of the money on, but what I don't want is well, we really needed the roads fixed, why did they send it on this? People don't understand there are certain things we can and can't do with the money. So that's why it's important to have that involvement and, not, get blasted for doing some sort of project that we shouldn't do, we should have spent on something else. So I like the survey idea, and we still need some public meeting where people can.
One of the thoughts, if everybody concurs, obviously after the holiday, maybe we put out a flyer to set up a town hall, maybe we can say to the school or something before we have our annual town meeting to spark that and invite people, because if they have something come in their mail, I get them all the time for different functions, town hall, and I say, okay, yeah, we need 10, and it comes to about 3x5, mail, and then obviously I know we can use some of those money to pay all those expenditures to send it, so just set a town hall date on a time and day that we feel.
Town hall forum.
A forum, we're doing a town hall forum, instead of select board meeting forum, because generally people don't, like, so I think more of a town hall forum would be good for this.
We
to
have a really
generate
good,
feedback.
South Falls had a really good community event, and I want to say that Vermont, I don't remember who put it on, but we went and you wrote down the top 3 priorities for your community. Then you kind of ranked them, and it was all around the room, there was papers, and you wrote on it what you wanted, and people went over and put on what was most important, so in the end, we ended up with like 3 things that were most important to that community. Which really,
Was that 2 years ago?
yeah, it was really good.
Rural Development Council Community.
Yeah, I think that's who it was. Something like that would be interesting to see what people, and then you decide, is it, are these things that are eligible for
Probably a forum like that, but for this purpose.
this purpose, yeah.
One of the things that seems to me is gonna be the toughest is you invite, you get a really good crowd, a good cross-section of the community from all sections of town. Now you've got a program in which there's a gigantic amount of money out there. Let's think big, what are our big ideas? Oh, here's the restrictions, and there's a lot of them, and it's very complicated. And it could be extremely frustrating if we aren't able to, I couldn't explain it because I can't understand it yet. And the thing that Katie Buckley just did was wonderful, but that was like drinking from a fire hose. That wouldn't work in a public forum, so I don't know how we deliver, how do we set the stage?
Hey, Jim,
Yep.
can I just jump in real quick? Sarah Lang with BDCC. I totally understand where you're coming from. How do you explain, like, what are the rules? What can you use it for? What can't you use it for? And then, you know, get people to only list projects that fall under those categories. A suggestion maybe to consider, and I think Katie mentioned this, mentioned that, you know, there is a lot of other different types of funding coming down the track. And so, you know, you may think about just doing, if it's not sort of too big of a lift, doing just sort of a community visioning exercise where instead of restricting people's suggestions to only what can be paid for ARPA, get people to just suggest what is it that they want to see in their community. And then this committee could take that list and parse out, you know, with the help of Katie, okay, this we could do we could use for ARPA, this we can't, this we can, this we can't. And but then you have that list of other projects so that when other funding comes down the line, you can say, oh, like we've got something for that. So it might be a bigger ask for this group, but maybe just something to consider that, you know, instead of trying to make it complicated, just doing sort of a community visioning exercise, and then you have all those projects and go from there.
Yeah.
I mean, another great resource is our town plan. You look at the town plan, everything we're talking about here is what we say we want as a community. You create that town plan for the purpose of planning.
Yeah, I just got an update, you know, who's that big town guy from WRC, Westminster ARPA, and a letter work today. Yeah. And so, if anybody wants it, I'll share it with everybody. Really outlines where our plan is, the goals, and it drills down more on what we decided as a community that we want to do, and how it meets federal and state issues.
Yeah, can you say that?
I can send it to you, yeah, then we can all look at, there's a reference by page in the book. It was really nicely done, actually, from WRC today, on great work. Very nice, so.
And then really asking, like, you're going to come back with what your credential committee is talking about. Asking women and women housing, you know, can you give us information on what you're looking for in our town? You know, is it something so that those people, they don't live here, they're not part of the community all the time, you know, these other partners, but they're talking about this stuff. So we need to engage them in the conversation.
So, yeah, to Cynthia's point too, and it aligns with our select board meetings every month until January, but they had one, and then the 10th that started at 5:30. WRC is hosting that forum, and they're going to talk about infrastructure, planning, and so that's open to the public through WRC. It's at 5:30, and our select board at 6:30, so 10 members of select board, you probably go for a half hour at least. And it's archived on our site, so if you want to catch back up on anything, you see what's out there, what we're talking about.
So I know that you went back to the land records thing, but can we suggest to the board that the council have the land records scanning stuff, or?
I didn't hear you, I'm sorry.
The land records scanning.
Yep. What about it?
I'm just wondering if everybody feels comfortable moving ahead with that, or you want to just wait? I'm comfortable.
So you just think willy-nilly, somebody will go to the select board and say, I want to spend this much money out of ARPA, and then they'll approve it, or?
No, I'm talking about just.
I understand, but just as the process goes, I just think if you start a process right now, that is the precedent as to how it's going to be looked at, it should be handled. That's all. I would look to establish some kind of process that you're gonna stick to for every idea that comes across for this money, and then you just work it through the same way. But you don't wanna start a process where tonight we're saying, yep, go to the select board and spend that money, because then I feel like.
Because she was asked by this committee to come back tonight with the quote, so we can maybe.
Okay. I just, yeah, maybe.
You're not part of the committee? I thought you were now.
No, I wanted to find out about really prior.
I haven't read.
When are we gonna make sure you're on this committee? Huh?
I'm interested in the education piece as well, because I can clearly see that there's eligible expenses for early education. And so I'm curious to know how the school system filters into any of this, and if they're a player in coming to us to ask.
They've got millions of their own,
But are they gonna wanna leverage any of the hours in conjunction with it, because it's an eligible expense, and again, I think however the process becomes, and however it gets approved, I think, because it's outlined as an eligible expense,
Well,
somebody's got a claim.
another thing with that is, I agree completely about the danger of accidentally walking into where now it's gonna be project of the week. And that's an easy slope to slide down, and we should, at the same time, yeah, okay, the schools generally have all this other money, and other groups have. If we shared some information, we certainly don't want to duplicate one.
Right.
That would be the worst thing we could do. So that's why the comprehensive nature of this is to share that information. And maybe what we could do is start to pull together, as we get this list going and learn more, I think we might start to get, at least I don't have it yet, maybe folks do, but a more of an intuitive sense of, yeah, this is gonna be an eligible project if we put it together. This other thing, and I got some that are in the back of my mind, that I'm thinking, I don't know how I could possibly claim that this is gonna be eligible in the long run. What's my connection to COVID kind of thing? But if we started to make a list like that as we went along, projects like the digitizing one that everyone seems to agree is gonna be a successful one, almost a no-brainer, we could flag that. We're pulling together as complete a list as we can, but hey, everybody, here's 2 or 3 that we think look really good in our priorities.
So we need to, back to what Katie said, is we need to come up with a structure, because remember, we have like 2 years, what is the timeline to even?
24, end of 24.
Right, so we need to come up with some type of process for because we can't wait until we know what all of them are to fund. So what could that process look like for a one-off kind of thing? So
Yeah,
we don't start just checking on.
I think it's a scoring process. So you have something that comes before you, and this committee comes up with a scoring of those items. And I don't know if this is allowed or not, but this money is obviously coming federal, state, to our community. I don't know if it's within a purview of a committee to say, we are not spending money, even on eligible expenses, we're not spending it on that. This is what we're gonna spend it on, and these are our priorities. And then as applications come in, you score them based on what your priorities are. So you may say, we're not gonna fund any education piece. It's an eligible expense, but we as a committee are coming up with our charge, which is, we're not gonna include that, we're not gonna include this. This is what we're including, and this is why it's important to us. This is how we think it reaches the impacted, disadvantaged, COVID, whatever. And then you score them. It's like if you're hiring somebody for a position, what's most important, applications come in, you score them, you then have your top.
There's one town, I don't remember who it was, I heard about it, the select board had a scoring sheet like that, and they didn't identify, we want to fund this kind of project or this particular issue, but it was the criteria that have to be met. And so it could be anything from a fire truck to an educational program, or anything in between. Score it on the criteria without making a decision.
Town projects and because this might just be a town project, we use all of them.
I'm sorry, what?
Like a town, like a water infrastructure project, a water project. So how do we, I don't think we can come up with any type of system until we really understand what the community is thinking. But how do you
needs, and you gotta go to the root of disadvantaged
The only
COVID.
reason I focused on that is because it was a disaster. When their offices were not open, and that to me is such a no-brainer. I understand
he was going to say.
Either way,
There's plenty of money in the bank. Just spend it.
That's a priority either way you cut it. And thanks for mentioning that. I mentioned table organization last time, but you did much better than I said. But one of the ways we should be prioritizing, Jim's here, you know, I'm here, we're on the Institute board. Jim makes it all happen. That's a quick way of getting a whole part of the community involved in this discussion. I mentioned Westminster Cares, obviously under COVID, is a primary benefactor of everything we're discussing. So I think if we assemble our top 10 most participating in nonprofits and/or ancillary organizations that are always at our meetings looking for help or making community, like you have said today, that we just brought up, get those top 10 priority organizations. That's the first way we get the most penetration as far as participation and ideas as to what we should be prioritizing. I totally agree with what you said. Table organization and then based on scoring methodology as to what, right, but of course, we could do that right away with what you need, and that's a priority. I don't think that would blow the process out the door, one primary thing like that. But I like the scoring idea, but I think we'll get quicker along on our penetration by just identifying organizations with everyone who really is a, what did you say, stakeholder.
Yeah.
Right.
We must have a list of who are
Well,
those.
like Russ, I meant not to say,
That would be great.
but Russ, did you talk to Lou? I know you're busy as hell on the water, on the aqueduct society.
We have talked to him prior to, yes,
Okay,
and they do have a court meeting.
and then Donna, Dawson.
I have not talked to Donna.
We have, and I just want to bring it up because of their house. We have 2 water districts established, one as a fire district, separate from our fire department. And I'm sure that they have some definite infrastructure needs and concerns that bring them to the
You don't
table.
really want to get me started on.
No, I
Situation of Sigmund.
as a community whole, of course, what we're talking about here is bringing everybody in. One of the things, like in the commissions and stuff, we have the committees that we do our work, and everybody kind of takes a role and is role. And so, one of the things that Kate, like she said, documentation. We're having these meetings in public, they're flowing, so that's why I just don't, I think taking these up in a formal format, what will be the flow forward when the stuff through the community records, the select board on scoring methods and stuff, so just maybe coming up with that flow that will satisfy the process.
And you're on the production committee, so that's another organization, and now you're on this committee, really appreciate it.
One thing I just need to throw out is water and sewer projects are way more money than we have. So though that would help with a feasibility study engineering, do we have means to continue? And then as they say in the wording, make sure you don't create something that is going to hinder you in the future. And those are big items. Those are very big items with big costs and management. So.
Did Lou ask for a water treatment center already?
I'm sorry?
Did Lou ask for a water?
Yeah, no.
That's kind of, that's the new day, as Kate should pour into it, we're gonna start pouring into tomorrow, we have to know, so that's, so at least now it's going for the village portion, that's what I was thinking, of. How much more money of that can we, we'll have to figure this out, and my fortunate is that we have a house in the village that has wells, family members. Kind of increase the village portion of that.
With the $100 million, it's spread out through the state of Vermont, we're gonna get.
Yeah, but they're gonna look at that, it's not usually, that's per capita type of thing, so it's not, population limit, they're not gonna just say, we're gonna give 100 to girls in Brown, they're not gonna do that.
They're not gonna split it up to be eligible for.
They're gonna have a list in our projects, but they specifically said, in highlight, this is for homeowners, and it's specific for water and sewer upgrades to help community contamination and all that, so that is a great conversation. So when the public comes and says, well, we can talk about our overall infrastructure, maybe scoping at the best for now to see what it costs. water system in, but then they have their private system where they can cover it. So we just have to see what that looks like over the next week or so.
So I'm using the list right now of stakeholders that, but I think maybe where we're at right now is the community involvement and trying to come up with what the feeling is, well, local businesses.
Yeah.
And figure out how to get that word out and set up a time that we have that larger community discussion. Does that sound like where we're at? And then I'm gonna call the town of Jericho and ask about their survey, their online survey.
Quick question, since you're here. We don't really have our own chamber of commerce per se, do we?
But we're a member of the Great Falls Regional Chamber of Commerce, which is up those falls. So Deb, Alice is her mother at the hospital. What is Deb's name? I'll tell you later. Anyway, there's an executive director and insurance chamber.
Okay, and is it still advantageous to remain in that?
Yeah, I think by default, just because of their charter, we're in it. And so they do stuff with Allen's, they do stuff with the Booster Station Market. They just had a huge fundraising event actually at the Rockland Health Farm. So they draw economics to the area.
So would that be our strategic stakeholder for business?
Alice Perry is her mother, but I don't know her name.
So are you writing a list?
Yeah.
Can you share it? Chamber of Commerce, we just said.
I put in local nonprofits, which is what I come up with a list.
Then our economic development partners.
Yeah, they will be here next week at the select board building meeting because they took a request on the last one. In addition, I do have folks coming from River Arts and Transportation speaking on that. Who will that grant as well. But I'll send that out, wait for some stuff tomorrow around, so those should be on the agenda.
Who is that?
BDCC spoke last time.
Yeah, they're coming to speak again for the request of Ms. Carlo, and then Mr. Allen asked for information, so we compiled that, so they're coming to speak to the ACCD opportunity that the state asked about, and then the transportation grant for that culvert. We got all the paperwork together, but we need the select board to approve it, that's the process, and then when the regional will give you a letter of support, and then it has to be submitted online. So, but I'll go into that. That's I'll go into that.
But we have more designated, someone brought this up at Great Point Farm, our principals for our farm and agricultural assets and community here, which is obviously more important. Do they have a formal organization of anything?
It's just the agricultural department they want.
I mean, for a town.
No, there's some local committee or people.
But we do have a general idea of the 2 dozen folks that are, make that.
Isn't that part of the local nonprofits?
Well,
Hang that
Not
in there.
really.
No, it's not
No.
farms. I mean,
So you want to put a category as farm?
I mean, they're community members too,
agricultural
so.
infrastructure is how they've defined it in the categories, that's under 3 categories now, that just came out in the legislature. So every farm generates a certain dollar amount for staffing, they're category 1, 2, and 3 through that. So there's a list that they have at the state of Vermont that identifies every registered farmer in West Minnesota.
Well, they're gonna be, if we send the mailings, will be on the list.
Correct.
And we could identify in that mailing just some people to think about what's a constituency, farms are a constituency, small businesses, and then people maybe get them going. Because I think one of the most important things I heard tonight was what Katie was saying about at the end, you don't want to be sitting here with everyone saying, well, that was stupid. And in my experience, I never was able to master it. It's really hard to get people to come to meetings and get involved, but it's real easy to have that
registered ag business, would you like me to reach out to the state and other kind of licenses and see if they can help get that list together, or see if there's an organization that represents them somewhere down here in the southern part?
The farmers?
Yeah, just to see if there's one established, because that's a good, very valid question, actually.
So it is 5 minutes of 7, and we wanted to stop at 7. So are we not to the point of stakeholders? I have 2 written down.
I've done this kind of was compiled a few minutes ago, sent it to you.
Okay.
It's also for everybody.
Okay.
You can add to it.
Yes.
But I think we should talk about when we want to do this.
I'm sorry,
When we want to do this,
the next meeting? What are you gonna do?
having the bigger community,
Inviting these
yeah.
to attend.
I was thinking January would be a good time frame, because we have our March annual meeting, that would give us time from that to get things together.
Yeah.
Because it does overflow to the, but that's just my thought.
That's aggressive, because it, again, is now season of holidays, et cetera. So how many
The end
meetings?
of January.
Third week of January?
Yeah.
There you go, latter part of January.
Yeah.
How many meetings are we gonna have between now and then?
Well, I was gonna suggest that in the meantime, and I like the idea of pushing that out a little bit. What Cynthia was saying earlier, we still kind of need to define the process that we want to invite people into.
Exactly.
And maybe with the regional could help us with that.
Yeah.
Chris is a good one for that, and I don't know if staff has changed a lot since I was there, but I'm sure they'd be able to help us with that.
Okay, so next meeting,
I think we should have a meeting for January to figure out how that meeting in January is gonna go.
sure. I think we're gonna have to have at least 2.
Yeah, because we can, yeah, so next meeting, I don't know.
Want to Zoom them, that'll make it.
I do have something to say, we gotta fix this situation, because some of our community members left, because they can't hear us.
Do you want to Zoom the next meeting, that way we have more of
I think we have to, but we're in this,
Yeah.
I mean, this pandemic is not over, and there are people that are not comfortable, and, you know, they could be, well, like, we, close contact, but she can still come.
a, yeah, no, I think there's more traction, I think it would be a lot more attendance with the
Yeah.
Zoom meeting, but.
Well, could we have a microphone with this, to pass around? That would help.
We gotta do something different.
Yeah, I mean, if we had a microphone passed around and maybe we could get a different speaker, you have a bigger speaker for the town, didn't you?
We have a remote one.
I think a better speaker projecting to us and a microphone so that they could pick us up might help an awful lot.
I mean, I know other towns, each school has their own.
Yeah.
You want to set up a Zoom meeting for good old week of December 7th, in favor of nothing.
That is next week.
December.
December 7th, sorry. I was actually thinking sometime in November, and then another in December, or
Okay.
January.
I'm just throwing
We're
that.
not proactive, we're gonna be reactive.
Okay. Very good.
So December will be December 16th, which is a Thursday today. That puts us, I have 2 meetings at the beginning with the commission, so 16th, and then it puts us before the Christmas holiday, so we're really shy.
I'm still talking November,
So you want to go after Thanksgiving, maybe the last.
the last
November,
week
maybe?
in November.
Another meeting. Okay.
What is the
The
last?
last week in November, is the first few days of December, so it's the second of December.
Okay, that works. December 2nd?
Okay.
Yeah,
December 2nd. What day is December 2nd?
Thursday.
At 5:30? Does that work for everybody? 5:30 PM.
John can't make that.
I have to change it after the social meeting for the WRC, we already have it slated. And I can't do it because we have engineer stuff that has to be voted on, so
What about Wednesday the first?
I can do that.
Is that a separate meeting?
No, I
Well, we're
can't.
not gonna be able to.
No, that's actually, Wednesday the 1st is not, we never, that's not a separate meeting day.
No, the first is not.
Right. You that?
I'm not on
You
that.
good? Well, you go with that?
My Nancy's not good with Wednesdays.
Okay. Tuesday 29th, Tuesday 30th, sorry.
What's that?
Tuesday, November 30th. And work for everybody?
Yes. What's the name?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's open, except that I've got a medical thing that morning that might make me want to stay home. But
I thought we were
We're
doing something.
gonna zoom it.
huh?
We're gonna zoom.
Okay, yeah, then definitely.
You can lay down while we're doing it, we don't.
Just don't do video, okay? All right, so what was that again now?
Tuesday.
Tuesday,
29th or 30th.
the 30th.